Welcome in.
Let's get to work.
The fastest growing sports spectacular. It's the Big E Sports Show. Your 1 hour comprehensive expose of all things in the sports universe. With a focus on some of the biggest sports icons on the planet. Now, here's your host, the one and only award-winning Elissa Walker Campbell.
Hey, we are back here on the Big E Sports Show. Elissa Walker Campbell. It is our Easter weekend edition, and the countdown to the NFL draft, it is underway. Teams across the league are finalizing their boards, evaluating prospects, and debating who could become the next franchise-changing star. We are so delighted to have joining us now Jon Cooper. He is the senior draft analyst with Our Lads NFL Scouting Services. Jon, first time on the show. Good to have you with us.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Well, when you evaluate this year's draft class as a whole, what stands out to you about the overall talent?
Well, we don't think it's necessarily the greatest draft that we've seen, but there is, like every year, there's going to be some really good players. There's going to be some guys that, are not necessarily on the radar that end up making a splash and becoming really solid players. We think it's very strong in the edge rusher class. We think there's some good offensive linemen. There is not a lot in the defensive tackles. There's a lot of corners. There's depth at that position. And none of the safety positions not bad, but it's kind of an average draft. A quarterback, has some good players, but not a lot of depth. You're not going to find a franchise quarterback, down the line. You're not going to find 5 first-round picks this year at quarterback. So that's something that stands out to me. It's not a great quarterback draft overall.
Well, every draft has an identity. I mean, how do you define this year's class? I mean, you're saying it's kind of mediocre, but how would you define it?
Wait and see.
Okay.
Just see how these guys pan out. Because there's, for example, the cornerback position, the defensive backs, there's a lot of guys that we think have the similar value that fall towards the second round, maybe late first. And it's going to be interesting to see how teams stack those players, because there's about 6 or 7 guys that, are hard to separate, and it's going to depend on how a team views them. So there's going to be some, I think NFL teams are all over the map on how this is going to be, how it's going to shake down in terms of how players are ranked. There's going to be some surprises, and I think we're all having a difficult time trying to figure that.
Well, one of the biggest surprises coming out earlier today, of course, the Raiders have committed 5 years to Kirk Cousins, and you just have to wonder, how does that change things up in terms of who will be the overall number 1 pick in this year's draft?
Well, yeah, we thought it was kind of a slam dunk that Fernando Mendoza was going to be that guy, as the quarterback. So I'm not sure what's going on there, because we think he is a franchise quarterback. He's not the greatest athlete in the world. He's not the greatest quarterback to come down the pike. Obviously, he played on a great Indiana football team, leading them to the national championship. But if you really evaluate everything, how elite of a football player is he really? The intangibles make him, in my opinion, a top prospect. I'm not going to bet against Fernando Mendoza from what I've watched. He's good enough, let's put it this way, skill-wise in all areas to be a solid pro. And those intangibles, the heart that this guy brings to the table, is something that I'd like to have on my team.
Yeah, a lot of fascination when we talk about the Raiders. Weigh in on the New York Jets. What do you think is going to be their top priority?
Well, they have a lot of needs. In terms of looking at the Jets, we think they're going to take a look at that running back. Probably they're going to take a look at Arvell Reese, the linebacker from Ohio State. I think they need help on defense, and I think that's a place where they could go. Their defense needs a playmaker, and so they're going to take a look, I think, at who they think is the best defensive playmaker in the draft, and whether it's Reuben Bain, David Bailey, Arvell Reese, or one of those, we think that's going to be where they're going to go.
Well, Jon, we have highlighted the Raiders and the Jets. Let's transition, head out west. Talk to me about the Cardinals. Who's their target?
Boy, well, if Fernando Mendoza is not the Raiders' target, I think the Cardinals would take him. That's just our opinion. They need a quarterback. They've got a couple of guys, but they're backup types. And I think bringing in a young quarterback somewhere in this draft is something we think they're going to do. They need help in the offensive line. They need help throughout their roster. Defense, they could go a lot of different directions. If it's not a quarterback, Spencer Fano, the offensive tackle from Utah, makes a lot of sense For us, George Young, the old Giants general manager, used to say, if you want to go to the Super Bowl, you need to dance with the elephants. And they need a big presence on that offensive, on the right side of their offensive line, someone that can play. And they got some guys there that can fill in the gaps, what they got in free agency. But we don't see long-term solutions there, and we think that's a place the Cardinals could go. You also need playmakers on defense. Whoever the Jets don't take, that's where the Cardinals might look. An Arvell Reese, a Sonny Styles, a linebacker, a Reuben Bain. One of those guys, David Bailey, one of those guys would be a good fit with the Cardinals.
Well, a guy that is a playmaker, how about running back Jeremiah Love? How would you evaluate him, his talent, and perhaps the impact that he can have with a team?
We think he's probably the best football player in this draft. I mean, we have in our rating system, we have Mendoza ranked ahead, and we're probably realistically, we got caught up in the intangibles with that rating. But, we're not going to back down off of that one. We still love Mendoza. But Mendoza aside, Jeremiah Love is the best football player in this draft, in our opinion. And running backs don't normally go that high, but this is potentially a generational type guy. 4.36 speed. He's got power. He's got agility in traffic. He's kind of a do-it-all football player. And somebody in that top 10 is going to take him, and they're going to have a real good player. We kind of think the Tennessee Titans, are the team that would take him. I think the Giants would love to have him, but we think the Titans are the team that, makes the most sense.
Getting you ready for the 2026 NFL Draft, we are going on one-on-one with senior draft analyst from Our Lads. That is Jon Cooper. Let's pause and have you direct all of our listening audience. Where can they go and check out all of your work online?
Well, we have a website. It's ourlads.com. It's very simple, www.ourlads.com. All you got to do is write in Our Lads and you'll find us. And in the top left-hand column where it says Our Lads, there's right next to that, it says Buy Draft Guide. If you want to get our draft guide, we put out a book every year. We're the only company that puts out a book anymore. There's some magazines that go out every year. But we have a draft book that is very comprehensive with 315 reports and listings for around 850 to 900 college players that are eligible for this draft. And so there's a lot of information in that book. It's been very popular over the years. For $40, you can purchase your hard copy. For around $15.50, you can get a PDF sent to your inbox. And for $15, it's something that we've done very well with. We've been doing this for 45 years. And NFL teams use it. Our depth charts that are on the website is another place if you want to go for information. Clicking on depth charts, you can go NFL and NCAA and even UFL depth charts where all the players are there with their bios and in a lot of cases scouting reports that we've written in previous years for these guys. So it's a very good tool if you're interested in the NFL draft, if you're interested in college and professional football.
Jon, what's that process like putting those guides together? I mean, how many total man hours for your team are there at Outlads? That's quite a process.
That's a good question. I couldn't even count them all, to be honest. We start in the summer. We get the lists of players. We've already got lists for the summer already, but they are changing constantly with NIL and the transfer portal. So, we're trying to put that all together, and we've got some people that work specifically with that, a couple of guys. And then we've got 4 scouts, actually another part-time guy that evaluates the kickers and the punters. And we're all really part-time. It's kind of like a love affair with football. But we've got guys at different parts of the country that are our scouts, and we divide the players up by position. And we start evaluating. We have a film bank that we have all the games that we watch, last year's games, this year's, the coming season's games as they come into our feed. We watch those games and we start writing reports. We start evaluating. We put together a college football preview based on what we watched in the summer. And then we put together our draft guide, which is the biggest project, which, we have the Senior Bowl, the Combine, all of those things are factored in. And about the middle of March, towards the end of March, we actually have the guide put together. In fact, the guide is going in the mail tomorrow. So our subscribers will have those guides. If anybody's listening that's a subscriber, you'll have those guides sometime next week, most likely. Mail can be slow, though, I got to be honest. But they're going out tomorrow. But we put a lot of time in, and it gets real. We get some deadlines we have to meet. Once we're done, then we do a lot of this. Radio shows. There's a couple of us that will do these shows and podcasts and things of that nature. So we do have a YouTube channel. So there's a lot of places you can find us.
Well, John, we are here in the great state of Texas. I got to have you weigh in on my Dallas Cowboys. They've got a pair of picks in the first round. I mean, what do you see them doing with the number 12 and the 20th pick?
Well, we love the Cowboys.
That's right. We do love the Cowboys. Let's go, John.
We've got a lot of teams we love. We've got one guy that absolutely loves the Giants, so that's a little bit of a problem.
Okay.
For our friends with the Cowboys. They need defense. They really badly need to pick defensive players, in our opinion. It's been something that's been ongoing with them. So we think they're going to take in that first round. We'll be surprised unless some offensive player that they really love falls to them. We think they're going to take the best defensive player available. We're not sure it really matters which position. It's going to be the best defensive player that they can get. And, whether it's an edge rusher, whether it's a safety, a corner, or a linebacker, we think they're going to take an impact player. They want an impact player on that, on defense. Obviously, with the Micah Parsons trade last year, Kenny Clark was a great addition. We got new defensive coordinators, the third coordinator in 3 years. So, and their secondary needs help. So, they could take the best safety that's out there. If somebody like Caleb Downs were to fall to them, they might even look at Thieneman from Oregon, at that spot. If Sonny Styles somehow fell to them, they would jump all over that because they do need an inside linebacker. And we think somewhere in that, in those first 2 or 3 picks into the second round, they're going to get an inside backer that they think can really play. So that's kind of what we're seeing with them.
Simply the best. Jon Cooper, senior draft analyst with Our Lads NFL Scouting Services. Tremendous insight and perspective. Good luck with this year's upcoming draft, and we look forward to connecting soon again. Okay?
Okay. Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.